Omagyanatimirandhasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Today is particularly auspicious for the followers of Srila Prabhupada in Kerala. Translation? Yeah. Inasmuch as the second canto of Srila Prabhupada's presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam has been released today. Yeah? Sound is not, from you, is not clear. The bass is called bass in English. Bass is a kind of fish, spelled the same way, but pronounced differently. For your information. Not that it will help you in your life at all. Yes, it. In English it's called bass, although it's spelled B-A-S-S. And there's also B-A-S-S, same spelling, is one kind of fish, but it's pronounced bass. So that's useless information for today. Srila Prabhupada worked very hard to produce his books. When we hear of someone working hard, we think of someone in a factory, something like this. And when we think of a devotee, we think of someone who's singing and dancing and no care for this world. But actually, Srila Prabhupada worked very hard to produce his books. He pushed himself very hard by traveling all over the world and preaching Krishna consciousness, which is difficult, it's troublesome. And Srila Prabhupada, he would stay awake at night. That was the time when he mostly worked on his books. And Srila Prabhupada said, I have to concentrate very hard to find the exact words. So it wasn't that these books just kind of manifested. They're not Swayam Prakash, but they came out of the hard work of Srila Prabhupada. And he pushed his disciples to produce them. At one time, Srila Prabhupada's disciples were 18 volumes of books behind Srila Prabhupada's translation. And Srila Prabhupada was very disturbed. He said that you have to produce these books as quickly as possible. So devotees consulted among themselves and they said that if we work full speed, I think we can produce 18 volumes in 2 years. Because it's a lot of work to produce a book. Srila Prabhupada would translate verbally and his dictation would be transcribed. And that would require editing, sampadhanam. They know the word edit? Do you know what it means? They know? Alright. And that would have to be carefully checked because sometimes devotees, they couldn't exactly catch what Prabhupada said. Sometimes it would have to be checked against the Sanskrit commentaries that Prabhupada was translating from because the devotees weren't sure exactly what Prabhupada had said. Sometimes errors would be made. For instance, one time Srila Prabhupada dictated that there is a planet of the mp3s. But his Western disciples at that time had never heard of mp3s, so they rendered it that there is a planet of the trees. So by the time that in 1975, when the devotees had to produce 18 books, there are 18 books behind. They were aware that this kind of error could come, and so they were very careful which is one reason that the process took quite a long time. So after transcribing and editing, then the books would have to be composed, and the Sanskrit verses would have to be, the Devanagari script would have to be inserted, and the diacritic, the words would be, the words of the Sanskrit shloka would be written in Roman script with diacritical marks. And the word-for-word translation would have to be inserted. And all the Sanskrit words that Prabhupada quoted in his purport would have to be entered also in this way. And in those days, in ISKCON, there were very few devotees who knew anything about Sanskrit. And actually most of the books that were pending printing were Chaitanya Charitamrita, which comes in, it's mostly in Bengali and it comes in Bengali script. So there are even less devotees who knew about that. And for each volume, Srila Prabhupada wanted many paintings to be made. So the paintings, that also takes a long time to make good paintings. Because Prabhupada himself would give the idea for the paintings. And then the artists, they would make some sketch and Prabhupada would approve it or disapprove or tell them to make some adjustment. And often the devotees would ask about different details, all kinds of details, because they didn't know. For instance, they might ask, should we present such and such a figure with a beard? Things like that. So the devotees in charge of the press thought that if we really push, we can get 18 volumes produced in 2 years. Srila Prabhupada said they should all be produced in 2 months. The devotees who heard that, they didn't laugh. They said, it is impossible. And Srila Prabhupada said, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. And actually, it is impossible by normal understanding. If you have dozens of untranscribed tapes of subject matter which people are not familiar with, and you're supposed to produce out of that, it's material enough for 18 books. And you have to produce that in proper edited form with paintings in 2 months. Actually, by material calculation, it is impossible. But Srila Prabhupada rejected the statement that it is impossible. And the devotees in charge of the press, that was Rameshwar and Radha Ballabha, they knew that their whole spiritual life was under test at this point. If they still insisted that it was impossible, that would be tantamount to rejecting Srila Prabhupada. On the other hand, it is impossible to produce 18 books in 2 months. So they consulted among themselves about this. Rameshwar and Radha Ballabha consulted how that might be possible. And they said, well, it could be possible if we bring to Los Angeles, which was the basis, the headquarters of the BPT, we bring from all over America and from all over the world, all the ISKCON artists, designers, transcribers, just bring everyone here, and you, Prabhupada, also have to stay here. We'll work 24 hours around the clock, and any questions we have, we'll bring immediately to you. So I remember I was in England, and one of our devotees he was previously an artist, but as a devotee he wasn't engaged as an artist. But somehow or other the devotees in Los Angeles found out he was an artist, and he was just gone. He just gone from London to Los Angeles. What happened? He went to Los Angeles. Just gone like that. And later, after all this was over, I was looking at one volume which was produced during that period. And it's a very beautiful picture of Chitraketu Maharaj with Sankarshan, Bhagavan. So I asked Rancho Prabhu, the artist who had come back to London at that time, who painted that picture. So he said, well, I painted the Chitraketu and someone else did the bush and someone else did... It was like they'd be in shifts, that one artist would work, and when he collapsed asleep, then someone else would come and do something else. It was a completely unconventional way of producing art. And he told me this, in that 6th canto also, there's a picture of Mahavishnu with Durga Devi praying to him. So he told me, I painted that. More or less I painted. I mean, a few others helped with a few things here and there, but I painted that. And Prabhupada was personally supervising all that work. Oh yeah, there's another thing about that Chitraketu picture. He said, actually we didn't finish it. We were going to do some more, but they just came and took it. It was left, the artists weren't there, and in the meantime, someone just came and took it and photographed it, and it was already, it's actually an unfinished picture. The artist wanted to do some more, but it was just taken and photographed, and that's it. So Rancho Prabhu told me about the Mahavishnu picture that he had painted. He said when Prabhupada saw that, he said, "At last Mahavishnu," which suggests that Prabhupada wasn't fully satisfied with the representations of the pictorial representations of Mahavishnu that his disciples had rendered previously. Oh, another way that they were able to get enough pictures for the books, because Prabhupada had stipulated a minimum number of pictures for the books. So devotees asked that, well, instead of having all paintings in Chaitanya Charitamrita, can we have photographs of the places connected with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes? Not all photos, but to supplement the paintings. So that Srila Prabhupada agreed to that. And so Bhargava Prabhu, one of the photographers of ISKCON, he was off on a plane to India, and knowing no Indian language, and with very little knowledge of the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Prabhupada hadn't been released at that time, he had to go to all remote places in Bengal and Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and find all these places and take photos, and Vrindavan also. Yeah, he photographed in West Bengal, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Vrindavan. So he told me, I asked him once, he told me he was going in all these places, and he'd just sneak in and hope that the priest wouldn't see his camera and take a few shots and run out like this. All kinds of things he had to do to even find the places and get the photos. And he had to keep a record of that this photo was taken in this place, and he had to do it all quickly and get back and take it back to America and process it all and print it. And in those days there were no computers, so everything was done by hand. There were computers, but it was just computers apart from a few scientific applications. It was just coming into the printing field. I think they didn't use at that time. It was very uncommon. Computer meant some huge thing, some huge machine with maybe like 24 KB or something like that capacity. That was it. There were no desktop computers. No one had even imagined them at that time. So it was like that. In next to no time, a whole team of devotees was assembled in Los Angeles, and their program for 2 months, each member of that team would chant 16 rounds, prasad would be brought to them, and they would work day and night. No temple programs, nothing. When they fell asleep, someone else would come and take over, if there was anyone free. Practically, it was nidrahara viharakadi vijito. They stopped. Practically, they minimized totally eating, sleeping, and all other activities just to work on these books. And they did it. They did the impossible by Srila Prabhupada's blessings. So now we have these books, due to the hard work of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. Of course, when those 18 books were finished, it didn't mean that all the books were finished, because Prabhupada was going on, translating more and more. So, every so often we'd find a new book has come. 7th canto, 8th canto. We didn't know even what was in the books in those days. But each book would come out a perfect exposition of spiritual knowledge by Srila Prabhupada, which are the greatest benediction for mankind in the modern age. So I may request you on behalf of Srila Prabhupada to produce all of these books, Srila Prabhupada's books, as soon as possible in Malayalam, Can you produce them all in 2 months? All the rest of the cantos? I'm not Prabhupada, so I can't hold you to that. But I suggest that you make some plan. I'm sure you have one already. And then, as we get the books, we have to distribute them. I think the Malayali people are quite proud, not in a bad way, of being highly literate. That word proud in English, it doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It can mean a good thing also. It's like the word Garavi. It's different to Dambhik. So Gaurav and Dambha, they're both translated in English as pride. But one is good and the other is not good. So if the Kerala people are proud of being literate, that's a good thing, but then you should know what to read. Reading communist literature is not going to help us. We should read the works of Vyasadeva presented by the modern Vyasadeva, who is Srila Prabhupada. One scholar praised Srila Prabhupada as an avatar of Vedavyas. And Srila Prabhupada agreed and said, yes, otherwise, how is it possible that I'm producing so many books? Yeah, so please distribute them. What a great culture, the traditional Krishna worship here at Guruvayur. What a wonderful culture this is. But people don't know the actual pure devotional basis of this. Generally, all over India, people think that bhakti is performed for material gain or for moksha. But that bhakti should be performed simply for the pleasure of Krishna without any personal consideration is the special contribution of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Especially Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has promoted this. And Srila Prabhupada has masterfully presented that in the modern age, particularly through his books. Which, in Srila Prabhupada's books, he presents the ancient pure knowledge given by Vyasadeva, but he presents them in the modern context so that people can, all over the world, can solve all the myriad problems of modern life by following the directions given in Srila Prabhupada's books. For instance, there are so many themes given in Srila Prabhupada's books. I'll just give one just as an example. Communism, as it's popular in Kerala. They just got thrown out. Yeah. Anyway, they'll come back again next time. Because that whatever government is in gets thrown out. Because people are discontent. So it's always like that. Incumbency effect. So Srila Prabhupada, he discussed that communism, the idea is not bad actually. The idea that everyone should be treated equally, that's actually a noble idea. But because in conditional consciousness, the tendency to exploit is always there. Unless there's a spiritual basis, then whatever system we have will simply be used to exploit others. And Srila Prabhupada presented the spiritual communism given in Srimad Bhagavatam, that not only human beings should be treated properly, but all living beings. The idea to treat humans well is good, but we should treat even the animals and all living beings properly. Understanding that all living beings are part and parcel of the Supreme Person Krishna. So this is the full-fledged understanding of communism. So like this, in Srila Prabhupada's books, he discusses all kinds of different topics without deviating from the teachings of Vyasadeva. He presents them in a manner suitable for the modern age. So I may request you on behalf of Srila Prabhupada to distribute these books, as the Malayali people are fond of reading, and give them this elevated subject matter. And also, devotees, they have to read the books. Please read Srila Prabhupada's books. So many times devotees ask how we can make advancement. It's a good question. Various forms of advice could be given in answer to that. Churnam. But one thing that I always stress is, please read Srila Prabhupada's books. In the second canto, there's so much important instruction is given there. So please read these books very carefully. You will be benefited, undoubtedly. So thank you very much for calling me here.